In the early 1970s, Clive exploited his friendship with his fellow Australian, the film director Bruce Beresford, to give him a small part in a movie that Bruce was making to a script by Barry Humphries of The Adventures of Barry Mackenzie. And so it was that Clive found himself in Paris as an extra on the movie with a bit of spare time, during the course of which he wrote one of his verse letters to me about our songwriting, because it was at the time when I was performing, we were writing a lot and making records. And when she went to visit him in Cambridge in 2015, Hayley Redmond got him to talk about this poem and about the bits of it which talk about our songwriting. And this is some of what Clive said.
Well, back in the 70s, I think it was, I was an extra in one of the Barry Mackenzie movies, and we were filming in Paris, and there was quite a lot of downtime. So in my downtime, I wrote a verse letter to Pete, and it's quite long, so I won't try to read it all. I don't think I could, but it's got various sections which might be relevant to the theme we're talking about here today. And this first piece is about strict forms of verse. Without them, no real thinking beyond the surface flotsam in the skull can happen. It takes more than steady drinking to stop creative writers being dull. Their gifts they'll soon find upside down and sinking, if discipline has not first keeled the hull. For all true poets, rhyme must equal reason, and formlessness be just a form of treason. So no surprise you were the man for me, though others sang with much more cute a voice. Approval was no matter of degree, but absolute. There was no other choice. Our linking up was pure necessity, as certainly as Rolls had need of Royce. I viewed you while the footlights shouted encore, the way one Goncourt viewed the other Goncourt. There's a literary reference there to the Goncourt brothers. And later on in the poem, I talk about Duke Ellington, for whom Pete and I shared a great passion, and he had a great knowledge. So I was rather showing off to him, showing that I knew a bit about it too. And I talk about how, when we met, we talked about Ellington's great numbers from the 1941 period of Main Stem, Sea Jam Blues and Cottontail, of Take the A-Train in a Mellow Tone, and Harlem Airshaft. We took turns to wail the solos so definitively blown by sidemen somewhere in the age of sail, the pre-war 40s, when Duke stood alone, his every disc a miniature immensity, the acme of school ease and spacious density. You can see the idea I was favouring is that a song should pack a lot in, and Pete believed exactly the same thing. And later on, in the poem, I preach the virtues of good humour, and the stanza goes like this. Grim-jawed solemnity may have its worth, but geniality is just as serious, and gravitas is half deaf without mirth. I don't mean one should roll around delirious, but art must take the air, not hug the earth. Authoritative needn't mean imperious. To preach cold concepts like the golden section is over mightily to seek perfection. You can see what I'm preaching for there. I'm really saying lighten up. And Pete and I did quite a lot of stuff that we still call funny. I hope we were right. And later at the end of the poem, there's a sort of lyrical passage towards the end. I always like lyrical passages on the way out, the last number. Much earlier and lovely in the dawn, the gardens of the Louvre were full of mist. The Tuileries lay like a smoking lawn, as I, my trusty notebook in my fist, saw Paris come unfolded like a fawn, and glitter like a powdered amethyst, whereat I felt, involved in her fragility, a thumping streak of tough bit's durability. We're all aware of how the continuity of Western cultures frazzled to a thread. It doesn't take a soothsayer's acuity to see the whole shebang might wind up dead. One's sorely tempted to, in perpetuity, give up the struggle and go back to bed. And yet tradition, though we can't renew it, demands we add our certain something to it. And strangely enough, I can now see that all that was a bit prescient, because Paris was the very place to predict that one day Western society would be in trouble. There's a little more, and then I'll end. This is just before I go home. Often I wrote the last part of one of these poems in the airport, waiting to fly out. I leave from Charles de Gaulle at Roissy this PM. SFHQ. The planes feed in a cluster like a shoal of mutant carp stuck nose to nose with glue around a donut in whose abstract hole aphasic humans escalating through translucent pipelines linking zones to domes seem pastel genes in giant chromosomes. And that's the future, baby. Like the past, it's flowing, but unlike it, it flows faster. Ici Paris, below me. Will it last? A heap of aging bricks and wood and plaster. Bombe glacée with one atomic blast. A single fingers tremble from disaster. But then who isn't? So what else is new? See you in London. There's a lot to do. And you notice there I'm celebrating the work ethic. I still do, even when I've practically run out of gas. And Pete understands. And I'm very, very glad he's done this album. And I almost like to think we've done it. I'm part of it too. And it's something I'm very proud of.